This video contains graphic images. If you're going to be offended by them, stop now. Let's talk about FOC and arrow penetration. Old Grumpy Hunter here. True or false? Your arrow is pushing the point or broadhead. False. When the string is released, the stored energy is transferred to the nock, then to the shaft, then to the point. By the time the nock is past the end of the barrel, all the energy has been transferred to the point. The result is the point or broadhead is pulling the arrow. What is FOC? FOC means weight forward to center. It's expressed in a percentage. What are recommended FOCs? Well, the AMO standard formula results in FITA, Olympic-style shooting, as 11 to 16%, 3D shooting 6 to 12%, field archery 10 to 15%, and hunting is 10 to 15%. Dr. Ed Ashby, during his extensive research of 25 plus years of arrow penetration, has developed the following categories based on the percentage. Normal is 0 to 12%, high is 12 to 19%, extreme is 19% to 30%, and also extreme is more than 30%. Archimedes said, "Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world." Arrows have two levers. It's like a teeter-totter. The balance point of the arrow is where the two levers are separated. Broadheads are going to try to steer the arrow, and the fletching has to overcome that steering effect. The higher the FOC is, the fletching has more steering control because the balance point is moved forward and the rear lever is longer. Is your nock moving all over the place? When the balance point and the midpoint of the arrow is too close together, or worse, the balance point is behind the midpoint, the fletchings in the rear lever have a hard time stabilizing the arrow, and the arrow will fly erratic. Furthermore, a higher FOC has an advantage of using smaller fletchings, which in turn reduces drag, drift, and arrow noise. Smaller fletchings increase downrange speed and arrow force, and the arrow flies flatter. How do you calculate FOC? There are two common methods for calculating FOC. Method 1 comes from the AMO and uses the length from the bottom of the nock throat to the end of the shaft. It does not use the length of the insert tip or broadhead. Method 2 uses the complete arrow length, including the insert, the tip, and the broadhead. There are two different formulas for calculating FOC. The first formula, the FOC, is the distance from the nock throat to the balance point minus the shaft length, which is divided by 2. All this is divided by the shaft length and then multiplied by 100. For example, if your balance point is at 320 and your length is 508, that'd be 320 minus 508 divided by 2, or 320 minus 254, which equals 66. 66 is then divided by the length, 508, which equals 0.1299, and that then is multiplied by 100 to give you 12.99%. Second method takes the same distance from the nock throat to the balance point, and that's divided by the length of the shaft. Then 0.5 is subtracted from that result, and the new result is multiplied by 100. For example, 320 divided by 508 equals 0.6299. 0.6299 minus 0.5 equals 0.1299, and 0.1299 times 100 equals 12.99%. For practical applications, either formula will work fine. The only problem is when two or more archers are talking about calculating FOCs, they need to know what method is being used. Like most factors in arrow design, the methods used are just numbers, and they have very little meaning other than comparing one arrow against the other. Do you need a precise FOC measurement? Only if you're going to launch a missile to hit a target 2,000 miles away. For the rest of us, it's not critical. All we need is a reference point. A high arrow weight does not equal a high FOC. You can recall, in the case of increasing and diminishing returns, I talked about adding weight. One of the ways was using arrow tubes. Arrow tubes will increase the arrow's weight, but that weight is spread throughout the length of the arrow, which for the most part will not change the balance point. You can increase the FOC and the arrow weight at the same time. The easiest way is to change out the head. Using 3 20-inch arrows and a 26-inch arrow that I have at the house, and changing from a 100-grain field point to a 125-grain field point, which resulted in a 25% in point weight, I got 8.92% to 34.82%. depending on which arrow it was. There are other ways to increase FOC, swapping out the arrow's insert for a heavier one. If your arrow has aluminum insert, change it out to a brass. Add screw-on insert weights. They're available in multiple weights and can be stacked. Add up to 3 5-grain brass arrow washers. What does FOC have to do with penetration? The first two things that come to mind are, 1. More weight up at the front end, the shaft flexes less upon impact. Less flex means more penetration. 2. As noted before, an arrow with a higher FOC will stabilize faster and sheds less energy. With all things being equal, an arrow that has extreme FOC will have tissue penetration that is significantly greater. This greater penetration is a result of encountering lower resistance. Furthermore, the lower resistance results in less shaft flexing upon impact. Studies have shown that shaft flexing in flight increase drag, and the drag affects penetration. With an extreme FOC, the arrow mass results in a very short forward lever. The shorter the forward lever is, the less flex there is. It is theorized that the effect is proportional to the ratios of the levers. To look at it another way, when the arrow's midpoint is farther behind the balance point of the arrow, the fletchings can do their job better. If you look at the advertisements of crossbows these days, the only thing that seems to matter is speed. But speed can only go so far when it comes to hunting. Besides speed, your main objective as a crossbow hunter needs to be penetration and your arrow setup. A couple old friends come to play when it involves penetration. Our old friend kinetic energy. You recall that kinetic energy is energy your arrow gets from motion. Our other friend, momentum, that is the energy the arrow retains as it hits the target. Both of our friends affect penetration. An arrow that is lightweight and has a low FOC will have a high kinetic energy, but the momentum is low upon hitting the target. An arrow that is heavy with a high FOC can have a lower kinetic energy, but has more momentum. This results in the arrow penetrating better through both flesh and bone. The arrow with a higher FOC will transfer its kinetic energy into momentum, resulting in greater penetration. Arrows with extreme FOC greater than 19% have a 40 to 60% greater penetration than arrows with lesser FOC. When properly tuned, comes out of paradox faster, are more stable and harder to change direction. My own personal experience with FOC. As a child, my best friend at the time and myself would cut sticks and use them as spears. We quickly discovered when the small diameter end of the spear was the leading end, and when being thrown, the spear did not fly good. When we turned the spear around, it flew much better. During the same time, we also made bows and arrows. The arrows acted just like the spears. And at the time, we did not know the reason that the arrows and spears acted the way they did, but we're happy we discovered it. Now, well, let's not go there. Let's just say many years later, without trying, I'm currently shooting a 20-inch arrow that has a 19+% FOC, which puts it in the extreme FOC category with a mechanical broadhead. I plan to increase that. Why do I want more FOC?
This video contains graphic images. If you're going to be offended by them, stop now.
I already get pass-through shots on whitetail and near pass-through shots on hogs. Is that not enough? The short answer is no. Deer, unlike hogs and elk, do not wallow in the mud. When the mud dries, it can become hard as a rock. The arrow has to get past that rock layer and frequently bone. Without a pass-through, the arrow shaft retards bleeding and can increase the time for the animal to expire. The Royal College of Veterinary Science in London has determined that the pass-through shot is more deadly. Anecdotal evidence indicates a very high number of animals are falling inside of the hunter, requiring no blood trailing or tracking when it has complete pass-through. First animal I shot with crossbow was a 125-pound hog. The bow was 150 draw weight, and the arrow, made out of aluminum, weighed 466.6 grains with a 100-grain head. The FOC was 9.57. The arrow did not have a pass-through, but did stick out both sides, and it broke ribs on each side. Pig ran 100+ yards, but crashed only about 40 yards out of sight of me. When I recovered it, my arrow was on the ground about 7 yards from it. Luckily, I heard it crash and had a good idea of its location. There was no blood trail to speak of until the arrow fell out. If I had not hit both lungs, who knows how far he may have gone. Many of you saying, so what's wrong with that? Nothing. I was a very happy hunter that evening until I started this video series, and my research showed me what could have gone wrong. What's wrong with the setup? Well, without an arrowhead, that arrow has a negative FOC. If I was going to shoot that arrow without a head, it would tumble. The FOC is too low with a 100-grain broadhead. It did not pass through on impact. There was no or very little blood to be found until the arrow fell out. If I'd not hunted that area before, I could have easily lost the pig. The erratic flight path. At the time, I didn't know better. All my arrows did the same thing, so to me, it was normal. Due to the very short rear lever as compared to the overall length of the arrow, the fletchings were working overtime to get the point on target. Loss of speed and momentum resulting in loss of penetration due to the erratic flight. I've talked about one arrow a few times now. Each time the FOC has been different. Even with the same weight pointer head, 100 grains, the FOC was different. One time the FOC stayed at 8.27, another time it was 9.57. Why the difference? The 2 points are different lengths. The longer one puts more mass farther forward to the midpoint of the shaft. Always tune your setup to the arrowhead you are planning to hunt with. I find it interesting that many bow hunters say that arrows weighing 650 grains or more are too heavy to hunt with, and they make it nearly impossible to hit anything unless the target's very close. Yet at the same time, throughout the world, there are primitive hunters whose survival depends on taking game in the open using crude bows with arrows that are over 2,000 grains, arrows that shoot flat. Dr. Ashby was observing a hunt in Papua New Guinea, and the hunter chose his heaviest arrow, about 4,000 grains. After the animal was recovered, Dr. Ashby asked the hunter why he picked that arrow. The response was, "Works best." After my last video, one of the viewers made a comment. I like the idea of shooting Cape Buffalo arrows at a deer. If your setup will take down an elk or even a Cape Buffalo, then you know that same setup will take down a whitetail. Vertical bow hunters are moving away from arrows that sacrifice everything in the name of speed. Why are crossbow manufacturers and crossbow hunters obsessed with speed and not doing the same? Crossbow arrows on the average are only 2/3 as long as the average arrow used by vertical bow hunters. Shorter arrows require a greater FOC. Does that mean that crossbow arrows need 67% more FOC? The table seen here shows the balance points for a 20-inch or 508mm arrow with FOCs from 1 to 30. A link will be posted in the video description for downloading, and it will be on the Old Grumpy Hunter website also. An arrow that has enough FOC that will break bones does not have to break the bank, but it has to be tuned to fly properly. For an arrow to be lethal, it has to be able to penetrate. The only thing the arrow cares about is penetration. It does not care what bow it's shot from. It does not care if it's shot from a bow made of bamboo, PVC pipe, or even today's high-tech material. It just does not care. How does it penetrate? Momentum is what gets the arrow through the tissue and bone. Adding weight to the business end of the arrow will do more to increase penetration than speed ever will. A properly tuned, large FOC arrow will not compensate for poor shooting skills, but it could save the hunt when the whitetail drops and turns after the arrow is released. I have never lost an animal because the arrow penetrated too deeply. Dr. Ed Ashby.
Post-production thoughts. Putting together this video was an eye-opener. As I mentioned, vertical bow hunters, no matter the type of bow, are moving away from speed and using heavier arrows and heavier FOC, while crossbow hunters are obsessed with speed and lighter arrows. You can do a Google search on FOC and penetration, and you'll find about 437,000 results. When looking at close to 100 of these search results, I found a common theme running throughout them. They were all quoting the same source in one way or another. All of them referred to Dr. Ed Ashby, PhD, at least once, if not more. Dr. Ashby spent 27 years researching arrow penetration in Africa, Australia, Papua New Guinea, and other locations. Because of Dr. Ashby's work, the South African government legalized bow hunting, which was followed shortly by other sub-Sahara countries. But it's not only Dr. Ashby who's been studying higher FOC arrows. Troy Fowler, aka Ranch Fairy, has been doing the same. When Mr. Fowler experienced the effect of higher FOC for the first time, it was without knowing Dr. Ashby's study. Mr. Fowler, like Dr. Ashby, was able to use live animals and or freshly killed ones to do his testing on. Both Dr. Ashby and Mr. Fowler have detailed documentation of their testing, and both are able to duplicate the results over and over. All of the information I found is based on using vertical bows of one type or another, but the concept should easily be applied to crossbows, both recurve and compound. The studies show that the shorter arrow needs more FOC because of the shorter rear lever. The average crossbow arrow is 19.125 inches long, with the majority being 20 inches, 508 millimeters long, or 70.18% as long as the average vertical bow hunting arrow. Shorter arrows need more FOC, but how much more? The only way to find out is to do testing ourselves. We cannot depend on the vertical bow users to do it for us. Luckily, there are field point kits available that have in one package, one each, 100, 125, 150, 175, 200, and 3 15-grain points. There'll be a link in the video description. Remember, the arrow has to be tuned. If you'd like to read Dr. Ashby's reports, the Ashby Bow Hunting Foundation has all of them online. The link will be in the video description and on the Old Grumpy Hunter website. Thank you for watching this Old Grumpy Hunter presentation. Please give it a big thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to push the notification bell.